Good morning, good evening. Really excited about this episode. This is going to be an Ask Me Anything. I just wanted to make sure, just give me a second here. I'm told I am muted. Is my volume coming through now? Just want to check in, make sure everything's good. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So just wanted to say welcome to DailyCyber episode 278. Again, I'm excited. This is going to be an Ask Me Anything. I've got some topics I want to cover and discuss. I want to make sure that you guys get a lot of value and information. Plus, I'm going to share some of my stories and what I've been going through so you guys get some insight about what's going on in the industry. You know, what do you guys need to know? What do you guys need to be comfortable with? So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. So welcome. I see here I got some stuff popping up on the screen here. One of the topics I'm going to be discussing a little bit later. First and foremost, I want to check in with you guys. How are you guys doing? What have you guys been working on? How's things going in the cybersecurity industry for you guys? I know we're coming up on Q4, so a lot's going on end of year. Clients are looking at strategy planning, looking at their budgets, things along that line. Something I'm going to talk about a little bit later is how to really work on that. So I'd love to hear kind of what you guys are doing, how things are going. I know for me, it's been busy. I know I was away for 1 week and then I was off sick, just trying to take care of myself. There's a lot of things like colds and stuff and flus going around. So one of the biggest important things when it comes to being in this industry is taking care of yourself, making sure sleep, hydration, rest, working out, exercise, taking care of yourself, because you know as well as I do, a lot of us sit from 90% of our day back-to-back meetings, going from one to another, configuration, working on stuff. You're generally on hands-on keyboard working on stuff. If you're not, you're generally in a meeting somewhere. So trying to make sure that you take care of yourself. You have some hobbies, things that are really important. So what I want to jump in first, I don't know how long the stream is going to be, but probably going to be 45 minutes, maybe an hour. So I want you guys to grab, a piece of paper, a notepad, whatever that may be. I want you to write some notes down as we're going through this, because some of this is stuff that I've come across day in and day out, building up my advisory role, working and training people and doing all that. These are some of the things that I think is, really important, especially when you're looking at how to build a cybersecurity program. Some of this might be a reminder. Some of you guys might be going, yeah, I do this, no problem. First step is, when you're going to any organization, when you're working with someone, you want to get buy-in from the key stakeholders. Who's your people? Who's your key stakeholders that you need to get involved in this process? Because what happens is, I find, is you don't have those right people in the conversation. When you look at people, process, and technology, the people start to break down the process because they didn't have buy-in. They don't understand the process. Sometimes you have to repeat it again because John, Fred, Alex, Bob, Stacy wasn't there. They were away. So what happens is you have to go over it again, get their buy-in, because maybe they're not aligned with it. They're not happy with it. They have some other partner they're working with, whatever that may be. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have the key stakeholders involved and they're all bought into working on cybersecurity initiatives. If not, you want to negotiate and understand, where do they sit when it comes to cybersecurity? Are they engaged and involved, or are they completely disconnected, right? There's kind of your different, levels of engagement. Completely disconnected, I don't care, I don't want nothing to do with it. 100% engaged, they want to know every step, cross T's, dot I's, they want to know everything. So you want to know that. So what happens is, you're talking through the cybersecurity program, getting buy-ins and deliverables and action items and things like that. You want to make sure everyone's signing off that needs to sign off and everyone agrees, or at least you start collaborating to negotiate, to agree on certain strategies. Next is baseline assessment. I find some organizations go in cold. Oh, you need to get this, you need to get that. You need to work on your technical controls. You need to work on your administrative controls. Technical controls are endpoint protection, EDR, SIM, DLP, data loss prevention, firewalls, hardening, email, phishing, gateway, like all these different things. People come in and just start to pepper people that you need to get this done. What I always recommend is doing an assessment and looking at what's the maturity of each of those controls, if they're in place or if not completely. And I'm going to pick on endpoint protection. Say, for example, they have an antivirus program, right? But they don't have a full enterprise level endpoint protection. Depending on the size of the organization, you have to look at what is needed, right? What is actually needed for that organization? Now, if they're a mid-large, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 company, they're probably going to be leaning towards an enterprise level EDR, SentinelOne, CrowdStrike, things along that line, Carbon Black, right? eCentire, like all these different solutions are going to probably look towards going that direction versus just a basic antivirus. Like I'm going to use Kaspersky, right? Kaspersky is a basic antivirus that you might use. Trend Michael has a basic one as well as an enterprise level. So you want to see what is needed. Now, when you look at compliance, insurance, things along that line, they're going to make you go towards more of an EDR, endpoint detection response tool, because they want to make sure that you have not only the protection, but the visibility and the reporting and the analytics to be able to now help to remediate and mature your environment and protect it. So EDR, looking at all the technicals, where are they and what's the maturity? Do they have it fully deployed? One, and I'll kind of go through basics. Is it fully deployed in the environment? And some, looking at instant response, when you talk to them, you talk about saturation. Like, is it fully saturated in the environment? Now, some of these tools might not install. I'm going to use SentinelOne as an example. SentinelOne doesn't work on Linux, right? So you might have some Linux servers, things along that line, that it's just not going to install on. But your Windows environment, your Apple, any Macs, it's going to install. And so if you look at the saturation of how many endpoints have SentinelOne, and endpoints being desktops, laptops, servers, and you have like 85 to 90%, saturation in the environment that, these endpoints have that installed, you're doing pretty good. Now, if you go on the other side and they have like 30% saturation, right? 20, 30, 40, 50%, but they have all these gaps in the environment, you're going to rank their maturity lower, right? And EDR. And then you're going to go through all the basics. Now you can use NIST, you can use ISO, you can use the Center of Information Security. A lot of these have frameworks you can use and go through and start to give a baseline evaluation of their maturity and go through and ask them those questions, then score it from 1 to 5. 1 being they don't have it, or 0 to 5. 0, they don't have it. 5, it's, completely mature. They're doing that. And I'll use the example of like a 5 maturity. You could have either one in-house support or external, doesn't matter, but it's fully supported, fully monitored, fully managed. It's integrated with all your solutions. They have reporting on it. They're going through the whole process of, they have the understanding of the alerts, what's going on, the threat hunting, and they're doing it on a regular occurrence, that they're reviewing the console, going through it. That would probably be a 5 for me. All right. Now, they don't have visibility, don't have reports. You start to go lower, lower, lower. So going through an assessment, technical controls, administrative controls, right? Looking at understanding their business, their budget, and things along that line. Once you get that point, you get that assessment done, then you write a report, and you write the report based on criticality. Now, something that I recommend, now this is not something you have to do, but I always recommend, right? Look in the sense of your assessment, what has external access versus what is just internal. So I'll give an example. If they have a development environment that's sandboxed, that's in an isolated environment, that doesn't have a public IP address, they don't have public access, they're not remote controlling it from the outside, it's really isolated, that now goes down on the priority of security vulnerabilities based on a server that has a public IP address, public access, they're remote controlling it, all over from their MSP, their MSSP to outside vendors, all are trying to get access to it and it's exposed. that now takes a higher criticality in a sense of remediation and potentially vulnerabilities when I do that assessment, because anything that I see that's exposed to the internet now goes higher in the risk calculator for me. So when I start looking at servers that don't have endpoint protection, right? Servers that are public facing, now it takes a higher priority for me that EDR needs to be one of the top priorities in criticality that needs to be deployed. The next thing that we look at is the administrative controls. Now, the administrative controls always have secondary, and something, this is my own personal opinion, technical controls take precedent over administrative controls, because the administrative controls, policies, standing operating procedures, walkthroughs, anything like that, are the documents that support the technical control and manage that technical control. But if that technical control is not in place, you can write all the documents you can, but you're not securing the environment. The analogy, it's kind of funny. I was talking to someone the other day. The analogy I use is like, it's like writing like fitness. Everyone's gone through fitness workouts, regimes, things like that. You write a workout plan. Talk about chest one day, back one day, arms, legs, this, with that. I'm going to have a rest day, do all that. You write all that and how much weights and what type of exercise you're going to do. You write that all out. If you're not actually going to the gym to do it, it doesn't matter. You can write all as you want. To me, that's the policies. You can write out, but if you're not managing and helping that to influence and manage the controls, the policies they're useless, in my opinion, right? Now they can meet compliance and regulatory, but if they ever do a due diligence on the organization, say, okay, show me evidence. And anyone that's gone through SOC 2 Type 2, anyone's gone through HIPAA or any type of audit, will go through where they say, show me evidence. Show me evidence of the control. Show me logs, show me screen captures, show me where this is configured properly. And that, to me, as a security expert, is more important to me than the policies. And that's when, and priority and hierarchy, controls, policies, administrative controls, technical controls, make sure they're in place properly, make sure they're running, then administrative controls, right? And then you kind of work out process and things like that, and you go through that. So I'm going to just take a quick pause there. Let me know if you guys are watching this and you guys have any questions. It's really important to get the stakeholders involved, do the assessment, write a really good report that drives their security program. And then also you have to look at, when you write that report, do a draft report and review it with your stakeholders to see what is in their appetite to be able to actually deploy. Because most clients that I work with want to have a roadmap, right? Want to have a roadmap in the sense of, when does that need to be implemented? Like, is the next 90 days, 120 days, next 6 months, next 1 year? When does that need to be implemented? It's important for us to know that and to be able to understand that, because there's negligence and gross negligence that you as a security expert have to be aware of, because anything you write in a document that does an assessment, provides recommendations based on criticality, and shows gaps in the environment, puts a clock on the actual organization. Because if they ever get into an incident and they get audited to say, okay, have you had an assessment, a penetration test, a vulnerability assessment, anything that can show that there was gaps in the environment and then they need to remediate it and it wasn't really planned out, we'll then start to point at them and say, okay, hold on a second here. You were told in January, it's October now, you were told in January to review your administrative privilege accounts, harden them, put two-factor authentication on, increase their password, do all that. Here's the steps they gave you. It's in writing. We did screen captures. We've done the audit. We don't see those controls in place. What happened? And if they can't show their due diligence of a project plan, a roadmap, something along that line, the documents, when they were going to do and timing and all that, they now are going to be held accountable that they didn't do what they were told by expert people. Got a question here. How does this impact your SLA for clients? Would this all be included in defined out? So when you look at and this is where I was talking about the roadmap, when you look at the service level agreement, you want to look at the timelines that are in line with what the client can do. You've got change management, and I'll put my business hat on here. A lot of times when you look at organizations, especially depending on the size, they've already laid out their budget for this year. So that's what I'm saying. Q4, a lot of the organizations are planning out their budget for 2026 on what their current spend was this year. What are they going to invest in next year? How much are they going to increase? Are they going to go up by 5%, 10%? What's in the budget by the CFO that they can increase by? Or do they have to keep it status quo? Or do they have to do some cutbacks? You have to cut back on this service. You have to cut them back that. You have to look, cut back 10% this year because, we need to save money. What does that mean? Right? In the lens, in the sense of financials, because you have to look at, does the financials align to what you're going to recommend? Now, this is CISO product development. A lot of times when you're looking at security development from like security analyst, all that, they kind of push. You need this, that. Doesn't matter. I need that. But when you're at that top level, you got to think about the business. You got to think of the financials. You got to think of your stakeholders. You got to think of all that before you start recommending too much, because it might not be in their budget. It might not be in their scope to be able to do. And then you put them in a position where they have to make hard decisions and defer out, get things changed, not do it, not recommend it. And this is why they're very strategic on when they have assessments, when they have, their pen test, their vulnerability assessments, to make sure it's aligned. And they do a lot of work through the year to be able to do that. Now, going back to the service level agreement, for my service level agreement, or when I'm working with them, I try to look at the remediation criticalities. Now, I work with them in the sense of, can it be professional services? i.e., can someone do it hands-on keyboard at no cost? So now that for an SLA, say there's a vulnerability of remediation, there's a configuration they need to do, they have in-house people or they have an MSSP on staff or as a vendor, and part of their hours they can do that, that SLA is going to be shorter, right? That's SLA is going to be that, can we do this, in the next week, 2 weeks? What's our timeline? That's going to be a lot shorter. Now, if they have to procure, and I use EDR. So you have to purchase license, do deployment, things along that line. Maybe they don't have EDR in the system or in the environment. If they have to do that, you might be looking at 60 to 90 days from going through demos, doing a proof of concept, kind of walking through that, seeing about procurement, negotiating pricing, then looking at packaging and deployment and going through change management and then troubleshooting. You can look at anywhere from 60 to 90 days. Now, don't get me wrong. I know in incident response, that's speed line because companies are like, I need it now. And then you're doing it within 24 hours or 72 hours. But in a real organization that's not under fire, that's not under ransomware, it's a slower procurement process, deployment process. So when you're looking at that, that's where you have the roadmap on what you would say they need to do in the next 90 days. And those are going to be your critical and high, and you're going to give them what they can consume and do. Because you want to be in line, because I don't want to sit there and go, and I'll use this example. You need to do a SOC 2 type 2. You've never done SOC at all, but you need to do a SOC 2 type 2, full configuration, be prepared and be ready for an audit within 60 days. It's not feasible. It's not realistic. You would never do that to a client because it just puts them in a bad situation. Next question. Sorry, just to clarify, there is no EDR from Microsoft that runs on Linux if I use Sentinel Defender. Can I send to Sentinel at least the S logs for Linux servers? So when you're looking at something, and again, this is a good question, right? When you're looking at a lot of the EDRs, right? Sentinel-1, Sentinel from Microsoft, or Defender, don't work. So yeah, you can look at taking, exporting the logs, putting them into some sort of SIM and having them alert. Now you'll have to fine tune the alerts, right? And things along that line to see, what are you tracking? Are you tracking authentication? You're tracking, access, you're tracking, uptime, downtime, things along that line. So you have to configure the SIM logs to be able to do that. So good question. SIM is again, the aggregated to kind of get all your logs into one place and then be able to start alerting and run reports on that. That's why it's good to look at the solutions that don't have security controls in place that can run, having different controls in place that can monitor. Because the biggest thing when you look at security is, do you have visibility, and are you reporting on that visibility and being able to look at the analytics and track it and see how you're progressing. Are you going downwards or are you going upwards? Are you improving the environment or is it getting worse? So hopefully that answers your question. Thanks, guys. Great questions. So stakeholders, assessment, report, then it's, looking at your planning, your roadmap, your planning, and getting everyone to buy in, making sure they have the right stakeholders involved, because you don't want to throw something across the fence either, and they can't do the work. That's another thing that's a concern, right? Like you sit there and go, okay, hold on. You know what? You need to do, I'm trying to think of DLP, data loss prevention. You need to implement that. And they're like, I have one security analyst. I have 2 IT guys. They don't know anything about DLP. Like, what are we supposed to do? Right? Putting them in that situation. Now you have to look, okay, you have to get an outside party. You have to get professional services. Can you do training? Is there training, and are they going to be up to speed and be subject matter experts in that tool to be able to manage it properly, or are they going to miss something? Do you have to have regular hours of regular training? Do you have to have someone come in and assess it? So you want to be in line that you slowly grow the program over time, and it's not a sprint, it's a long distance race, right? You want to make sure you're maturing it quarter to quarter, every 6 months, year to year, that you can benchmark and look back at, hey, we started here, now we're here, now we're here, now we're hovering here, because that's really what we need to do, right? Now, this is the great thing, right? Is when you're there and you're maintaining, you're looking, how can we optimize? How can we do innovation? How can we do certain things? So it's really important to look at your tracking of your analytics to make sure it's in line where you want to go, and it's not deployment can't manage. Next question is, try hack me a good place to learn hacking, or do I need to learn other things before starting to learn hacking? Great question. I recommend, once I jump off this subject right now, I'll answer that question. If you guys have any questions about off topic, try hack me, things along that line, let me know at the end. I'll go through kind of all my topics, because I want to make sure we get this all covered, because a lot of it is kind of things you're going to need to know. And then at the end, what I'll do is I'll go through ones that you guys are talking about, training, development, things along that line. So any questions about, how to build out a cybersecurity program? This is important, because if you know how to do this and you know how to negotiate it, you're really going to have a strength in having conversations with the team, senior leadership, your stakeholders, your outside partners. Just because you want to make sure you understand how to build it properly and have the foundation. And then what happens is you'll be able to repeat it and show results, right? It's so important. And that's why I wanted to bring that up, because again, we're coming to Q4. People are going to start to have these conversations, something that I want to make sure you guys are ahead of the game and you're starting to have that conversation. Stakeholders, do your assessment, report based on criticality, right? And be able to implement, having a roadmap, look at your roadmap and your deployment, and then look at budget and financing, right? Make sure it's aligned. So I'm going to jump to the next topic. All right. If you guys have any questions about that, let me know. So one of the things that we're seeing, right, is, the human attack surface. I'm seeing this more and more when we're looking at, how organizations are now looking at phishing campaigns, social engineering, things along that line. And we talked about this. I've talked about this time and time again, is it's increasing the quality. Now, I'll show you an example here. You're starting to see on Facebook, social media, better campaigns, better marketing, better ways of getting people to click on something, right? Or to go somewhere. From text messages, video calls, Deepfakes, you name it. It's coming to the point where, unless you physically know the person, you got to be very careful on engaging, interacting, because you don't know if you're gonna get compromised. Now, I'm not saying this to scare everyone to do it. It's just awareness. It's awareness of, what are you clicking on? Is that email? Is that text message coming from someone that I know? Is it valid? Is it a valid message? Or is it something that red flags, you kind of got your spidey senses going off, you're kind of feeling tingling like, hey, that's not right. My main point here for everyone from CEOs down to help desk analysts, if you don't feel right about something, take a step back. Take a step back, do your due diligence, check it out. There's nothing wrong in not responding right away. And I know, a lot of us have this. I have it as well. Is this urgency? Oh my God, somebody text me, somebody email. I got to respond right now. I got to get on the keyboard and do that right now. And then I'm learning from myself is, okay, don't respond right away. Take a break, walk away, come back, look them up, look up their, like I had an email this morning, someone saying, hey, we can clean your office, right? We do office cleaning. We're in your area. And I'm like, at first I want to respond back and just say like, okay, hold on. Like, I don't need an office cleaning. That's fine. Thank you so much. But then I was like, hold on. Let me look into this email. I find out the email's coming from the UK. The person's not on LinkedIn. The company's not even up there. Like, oh, okay, well, time out. Like, yeah, I'm going to report this as spam and then delete the account, right? Delete the email. But things like that, I would have responded to. I would have, no, I'm not interested. But what else is going on? What information? Are they trying to say it's a valid account? Are they going to start going at it? Like, what is that? So immediately I just deleted it. The next thing to think about, and I'm going to go through, I got a little bit of a checklist here I was writing out before. So one of the things I want to talk about is humans are the new perimeter. So you think about that when you hear that. Humans are the new perimeter. What do you think when you hear that? And I want to take just a quick pause, give you guys a second to answer that. But when you hear that, humans are the new perimeter, what does that show you about how we've evolved with technology? All right. It's kind of really important to have that thought process. And it came to fruition for me is when the pandemic hit, right? About the new perimeter, where the access points are. Where's that? So I want you to think about that. Right? It's kind of really interesting because when you start to look at what the new perimeter is, it really, really changes your mindset of security and what you need to protect. So one thing that came to me and to my mind was this. When we were setting up networks and when we're kind of looking at, you look at the perimeter. Perimeter is normally where your firewall is, your house is, and your house meaning your company. And you normally have, your firewalls, everything's behind your firewall, right? And you might do defensive detection layers and firewalls and things along that line. But what happened was when we had the pandemic, people started working from home, right? And they started working from home. They started working more off their mobile devices. They started working on, their tablets and things along that line. So their perimeter now becomes wherever they're working from, right? It could be Starbucks, hoteling suite, a hotel, their home office, whatever that may be. So now you have to think about what's the security in all those areas at their home, on the devices, how they connect, right? Are they using VPN? Is the device secure? Or are they using the device because their kid now gets to use it to watch videos, play games, things along that line while, they're not using it? Like, you really have to think about how you're protecting the perimeter in the environment, right? It's so important right now to keep your mindset. And it's interesting. I was working with a client about doing a topology, and you look at this and then trying to draw out, when you first talk about network topology, a lot of times they draw out their internal environment. I've got, this goes out to the cloud, but then use your firewalls, and this connects to the internal environment. We've got switches and hubs and things like that, but the people there, and you go, okay, great. How many remote users do you have that work from home? Oh, we have X amount. And then you go, hold on a second here, but how are they secure? Is it a company laptop, company desktop, right? Is it, are they going through a VPN connection? Like, walk me through that security. And you can kind of see people don't connect that. That's part of their environment. Each employee's home now is a new location that they have to think about when it comes to security. one of the questions or the comments come out, I've heard that cloud is the new perimeter. 100%. It's another area, right? When you're looking at Azure, right? You're looking at Microsoft Azure, look at Amazon, you look at Google, all these clouds, 100%. It's a different area of a perimeter that you have to protect, right? Some of the organizations that I work with have platform as a service, software as a service, things like that, and they have clients in their environment, things like that they're protecting. So what happens? You got to think about, how are you connecting? You know, how's customers connecting? How are you connecting? Your support people, or do you have third parties connecting? So you really have to look at, and then that environment, they could have their Active Directory, they could have their servers, they could have their databases all in the cloud and managed, and then connected through the environment, which they might not have on-prem hardware, in the sense of servers might not be on-prem. They might be all in the cloud, right? So 100% totally agree with that. Human as a perimeter, talked about phishing. Awareness training, something that I think every company now is starting to do and being more mature on, is cybersecurity awareness training. I think it's so important to do that and keep evolving the training, right? Keep on top of it, because you want to keep it, I don't want to say in front of mind, but at least in the realm of thinking that when something comes up, the employee, that individual, triggers and goes, I remember my training and it said to do this. I don't feel right about it. I'm gonna report that. I'm gonna check it off as spam. I'm gonna report to IT. I'm gonna do that and do my due diligence. If it's nothing, then that's great. At least I did my job. But if it does come out to be something, maybe I let IT know, and then they can block it from being distributed to someone else, right, in the organization. And this is one thing I was writing a note about. It's like building a pause culture, right? Making sure you stop. I find with most people, and again, I'm as worse as this as well, that we're so quick to take action, right? Because we're doing like 3-4 things at a time. I'm checking my phone. I'm going over here. I got an email. I just got a call. This happened. And I got to jump over here. And, oh, hey, there's 5 messages came. I got to answer those 5 messages. Then I jump over here. I got a message on Slack, Teams, whatever that may be. I got to answer that. And and you're jumping back and forth. So you're trying to always go, versus, hold on, take a break. Got a message in team. An email came in. That doesn't look right. Okay, I'm gonna take a pause for a second. I'm gonna go over here. Okay, take a step back. Now let me look at that email. Am I expecting that email? Is it the email from someone I know? Why does it have an attachment? Why does it tell me I owe an invoice? Do I owe an invoice from that person? Like, now you're going through your due diligence. So always be aware and take a break. Right? It's okay. Right? The work's gonna be there tomorrow. You're gonna sprint. You're gonna run through things. It's okay to take a break. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about too is, there's a fine line here for me, is empathy and positive reinforcement, outperform shame-based training. I think there needs to be positive reinforcement, but I also think there needs to be accountability, right? And what I mean is, you train them, you have positivity, you go through like a 3-step process of, they make a mistake, you go through the due diligence, you go take them through training. They make a second mistake, same individual, and you're tracking this. Then you pull them into management, see what's going on, see what's happening. By the time you get in the third, that now to me is like, okay, what's going on? Like, now they're making mistakes, and now this is potentially almost, critical to the environment, because you and I know as well as anyone is that it only takes one click on one link and one malware execution, right, deployment, to start the engagement of a threat actor to get in the environment and start moving laterally and going through, right, to get that person's password and start doing that. It just takes one email. And if that individual is starting to check the boxes, to me now it's like there's an accountability model where you have to hold them to a point where, if they have privileged access, confidential access, access to information that is sensitive in any way, and then they're following that 3-strike rule, that now puts the company has liability for the company and risk for the company, because if that person gets compromised, the company gets compromised. Now, if someone has no privileges, no access, or very limited access, and doesn't really have escalated privileges or confidential information, the next thing I would say is, at that point, is See if you need to readjust their role, right? See if you need to help, see if they need some time off, like kind of be sensitive that way. And that's where the empathy comes. But if it comes to a point where someone is at a higher role in the organization, has more responsibility, right, and more access, those are the times where you have to kind of look at those 3 strike rules and potentially even termination. Like I've worked with situations where, we've had to talk about termination because they're at a point where the company can be negligible or highly impact in the actual compromise, and they could lose money, brand reputation, can impact the environment, customers. So you kind of really have to look at where is that sweet spot where you're kind of like, okay, we have to do that. Now that should be in a policy written out, right? An acceptable use policy, how you people are accepted to work in the environment, but also the accountability of what's going to happen if there's any breach of that responsibility and the escalation process. Any tips for starting as a vCISO? I have tons of experience consulting offense and compliance. I'll briefly answer that one. First thing I would say is starting as a vCISO, you got to have background, and Neil helped me with this. You got to have a background in the technical environment of cybersecurity, right? You got to understand technology, network, data flow, how the environment works, how things are configured and set up. So you have to have that technical knowledge, right? And that really helped me when I was going through IT. I had the technical knowledge on that side. Then I went to sales, which helped me with the cybersecurity controls. But then when I went to incident response, then it really helped us to understand how things are applied, deployed, and what works and what doesn't. So you really have to have that technical background. Next is you have to have the soft skill. You have to have advisory. You have to know how to consult. You have to know how to work with clients and be able to consult with them, advise them, best practice, what to do, work with them, and be a collaborative partner. This is also on that soft skill. You have to understand business. You have to understand finance, right? You have to understand organizational structure and roles and responsibilities, board of directors. Those are key areas to know. Now, one thing I also would recommend is there's larger, even some mid-sized companies that do advisory type roles, is to get in that role as a junior advisor and start working underneath someone and get some mentorship, right? How do they do it? How do they plan it? How do they strategize? Now, I know she said I have tons of experience consulting offense and compliance, but do you have program development? Do you have business background, right? Because coming in as consulting of the offense and then compliance, it's great knowledge, experience, but how do you work with that, understanding the business objectives and what they need? And then can you do it in a strategic way? And I don't know your background and know if you can do this, but can you do it in a way that strategically works with their initiatives and their deliverables, so you're in lockstep with them versus security is here, the business goals are here, and it's not aligned or connected? Good question. Next one I wanted to bring up is zero trust. Now, when you guys hear zero trust, what do you guys think? I'm going to leave that out there just for a second, just so you guys can think about that. Next generation, zero trust, defense in depth. A lot of these are methodologies, but a lot of times people take them as strategies and theories that they want to apply, but to actually implement it, it's extremely hard to manage, especially if you're not a security focused business. So thinking this way, wanting to kind of throw out zero trust, because I get some clients that talk about zero trust. You know what? I want to do zero trust. Zero trust is so important. We're going to do zero trust because another colleague or friend told me that, there's zero trust and we need to be zero trust as well. And this compliance is saying we need to be zero trust. And I'm like, okay, so what does that mean to you? what does zero trust mean? Right. And they're like, well, you know, you lock everything down. No one has access and all that. I'm like, to a point, like I get the theory behind it. But at the end of the zero trust is you basically don't trust anyone that's authenticating in the environment, and you're continuously verifying that individual through their logging in, through their access, through what they're, you know, accessing from data to privilege access to accounts, whatever that may be. You're constantly validating that. You're constantly monitoring that, and you're always going through your checks and balances. So if you want to have a zero trust environment, can you do that? Do you have the team and tools in place to monitor that ongoing and be diligent about it? I could say, yeah, oh yeah, I have zero trust for my Active Directory, and that's what zero trust is, and that's all I have. Okay, great. When's your validation? When do you run the logs? How many times do you monitor the logs? Do you have a point where every time someone is at their time's out, they log back in, a two-factor authentication, you're going through that process over and over and over again? And are you logging that and you're tracking that, you're running reports on that to make sure? And they're like, most small to mid-sized companies will go, no, I don't have time. Like, we get logged in the SIM, we make sure that if anything that is suspicious or malicious gets flagged and monitored and all that, and we get alert about that. For something that's, you know, geolocation, if someone from Russia logs into our company in Texas, right, and tries to get access to the Active Directory, we'll get flagged about that. I'm like, but what about everyone in Texas? Do you log that, monitor that, make sure you're tracking that, and you're going through the logs consistently and alerting for that? No, we don't do that, but we do log and say if maybe it's behavioral analysis. Like if Johnny is logging in from 9 to 5, and all of a sudden in the, you know, one day at Saturday night, he's logging in at 2 a.m. from China, we'll flag that. But that's geo-blocking as well as behavior analysis. So going through zero trust, I tell people that work towards more defense in depth. Then start to look at your zero trust and where you can implement as a hybrid approach. Maybe there's some areas you can do it, some areas you're not going to be able to fully execute for the whole organization. But maybe there's areas you can do zero trust and you can do, you know, a good job of it. The principle of never trust, always verify, and what it looks like in practice. Why must zero trust why most projects fail? Lacking of leadership and understanding of cultural resistance. Right? And that's, again, like I'm talking about, can you implement it throughout the environment? Start small. This is what I was talking about. Identify, you know, devices, identity devices, and network segmentation before enterprise rollout. The human factor, how users friction can kill adoption. So again, with zero trust and like that, they keep logging, they keep authenticating, people are going to get frustrated, right? Integrating zero trust in hybrid work and legacy systems. Metrics for systems reduce attack surface. MFA covers lateral movement detection, and to communicate zero trust benefits in the business terms, risk reduction, agility, and resilience. So kind of a high level of zero trust. I wanted to talk about that because it was really important as I start to talk to more organizations, get there. It's a key word that keeps getting flagged and pulled out. It's like zero trust, zero trust. We need to do that. We need to do zero trust. And it's like, okay, well, your maturity is not, and go back to the assessment. You don't have your endpoint protection fully saturated. You don't have this endpoint. You don't have this. So now you're trying to go to zero trust, but you don't have complete monitoring of the endpoints or your servers. So until you do that, you have to kind of make sure you have a solid baseline, right, of your security. Let me know if you guys have any other questions about that one. Last one I want to cover today is cybersecurity storytelling, turning data into board decisions. Okay, so this is for my analytical people here, the people that are data-driven, reports-driven, you know, the ones that create a board-level report, which is, 75 pages long of just charts and data and just information. I don't know how many people here have been in a board meeting or been asked to go speak at a board meeting. It's very rare that you'll get more than 10 minutes at a board meeting. I want to throw that out there. I've been asked to come speak, answer questions and all that in several board meetings. And a lot of times it's, Brandon, tell us how we're doing. You're doing this, they matured, they moved up that. Great, thanks so much. We have 2 questions. What about this? What about that? What are we working on this year? Okay, thank you so much. Next. And you're like, I'm done. Like, so these long data information that you have is good for them for review later. It's good for them to be able to consume if they have any questions. It's good to provide them ahead of the time at a time too, because a lot of times they'll review it and they'll want to highlight certain points. But what you want to do is you want to tell the story of how the data is showing how you're maturing your security posture. And there's some, hopefully, knock on wood, everything's maturing, it's moving in the right direction, everything's kind of improving, but there might be some roadblocks. There might be one that you had a compromise, you had an incident, this has happened. And you have to tell that story as well in the board, because they're going to want to know, okay, so what happened? Well, John, like a threat actor got in through this person's account, we reviewed after doing the debriefing. We saw that that person was going to a site that they shouldn't have gone. They provided their credentials. When we got notified that the threat actor got into the environment, we did X, Y, and Z. The team was very efficient in what they did, be able to respond, contain the environment, to be able to get the threat actor to the environment, reset the account. All that lessons learned is we got to do more education when it comes to cybersecurity with training. We got to look at where our individuals are going. We're going to block some sites. So you tell that story of what the challenge was, what you did, and then lessons learned and how you're going to improve it. And it's very important to have that skill to be able to do that, because they want to have confidence and trust in you that you know what you're doing and you're moving the needle forward. And then when a situation comes up, yeah, it's going to happen. How did you handle it? Did you handle it relax? Were you able to control the environment? You were able to contain it? Was the impact minimal? Right? Did they have any challenges in the sense of brand reputation, affecting customers, time out, whatever the time outages in the sense of the servers were out, the network was down? If you're able to have minimal impact, tell the story on what happened, what the team did, and then how you guys are going to improve. It's going to go like head over heels when you start to ask for what we need is this more of X, whatever that X is you're asking for from the board, right? We need more buy-in for more resources. We need more technology. We need a bigger budget for next year, whatever that may be. It's going to give you that ability to expand, right? Your budget, to be able to grow, to be able to look at what's next in your ask, because now they have confidence that you are doing the right job when you're doing the running the security program. If you're not able to address that or speak on that, what's going to happen is they're going to ask a lot of questions. Their confidence is going to be a little bit lower. They're going to feel that, okay, hold on, we have some concerns. And through those concerns, it's going to come back on you that they're going to say, okay, we're going to now want you to be more consistent on building that out first, building up confidence, and then we'll start working on more mature things. Now, don't get me wrong. I've had sometimes on the board, because a lot of the board members do work on work for other organizations on their board, and they can see different maturity. They can have maybe one company they work at is a little bit more mature than the organization here, right? Say the one I'm speaking at and the other organization, and they can say, oh, well, what we recommend is, can we implement these controls? Can we do this? And then we can say, yes, we can, and we need this, or we say at this time we still need to get the foundation here, and that's a great recommendation. We'll put that in our budget for next year. So it's, again, having those conversations and being able to have that ability to tell the story, to take that story and evolve it in a way that builds up confidence and is able to work with the board and senior leadership to show how everything is improving. Awesome. Give you guys a couple minutes. I don't know if there's any other questions. Those were the topics I wanted to cover today. A lot of great information I hope you guys get and take away from that to help you really look at the life cycle of being an advisor, working with an organization from start to finish, from starting with the program to now explaining the program at the end. Now, I know there was one question here. I'm just looking at here. Is Try Hack Me a good place to learn hacking, or do I need to learn other things before starting to learn hacking? There's a lot of great, solution out. Try Hack Me is actually a good place to start. What I would say for yourself is, like, what's your background? Like, are you coming cold in this? Do you know a little bit of scripting? Do you know a little bit of networking? Do you know server setups, configuration? Right? Do you know a little bit about email? Knowing more about the technology is going to help you when you look at hacking something, because the more you know how something is set up, the easier for you is to start to navigate around and see where you potentially can compromise that network, server, application. If you don't know how it's set up, it is literally kind of going blind and trying to figure it out. Now, like I said, you can learn that. Not saying you can't. And it's kind of funny. I don't have them right here, but I was cleaning up my bookshelf, and I had a whole bunch of those red Hack Me books that I used to read and review. And it was kind of talking about the application where you get in, and, you know, where's backdoors and things along that line. If someone doesn't configure this properly, having that knowledge is going to help you be a pen tester and work towards doing that. So that would be my recommendation, is the more knowledge you have on the blue side, and I'm saying configuration and setting things up, the better you're going to have on the red side when you're looking at how to compromise something, right? So that would be my recommendation. Just see if there's any other questions. If you guys want to get a hold of me and reach out, best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. There's my LinkedIn address. Reach out if you have any questions, any follow-up. Do me a favor, share this out to your any colleagues or friends. I want to make sure the information gets out. I think it's so essential and important to keep sharing this information with colleagues and partners and friends and all that, just because the more we come united on our security front and what we're doing, the better our security postures, the more conversation we have, the better that we can become a security professional. Because as you and I know, it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. What I learned today changes in the next couple of days. Right? And then I'm going to learn from someone else that I'm meeting with, that I'm going to have a conversation with, and they're going to say, hey, Brendan, did you know this? And I'm like, no, I didn't. And they're going to start sharing information where it's going to be like, okay, now I learned something new. Now something I can share with you guys. Awesome. Well, I don't think there's any more questions. I'm going to leave it at that for today. Thank you so much, guys, for coming out for Daily Cyber. Don't forget, software is hackable. Being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.